In our current global climate, we're facing challenges never before experienced by this generation. Oppositions where no one seems to have clear directions or answers to the risks facing us. Confrontations like racial and gender unrest, political gerrymandering, toxic leadership, economic crisis, global pandemic, health threats, pre-existing medical conditions, isolation, boredom, and loneliness are driving people to desperation. As a result, people are confused, afraid, anxious, and perplexed, and they need answers to some tough questions and even tougher situations. They are looking into different outlets for answers to gain assurance and consolation. Some have drawn closer to the embrace of family, while others look more towards their friendships, education, and even religion. What we need is a fresh voice of truth and clarity, and not a stale religious echo from the past. There's a re-emerging voice on the horizon that isn't afraid to stand alone and give spiritual and mentally sound direction to a world searching for answers. G. Alfred Palmer offers a voice of sound human development and empowerment to those willing to hear. There's a need for new ideas to old principles, a perspective from a timeless origin, but with current vision, a thought leader who understands what it means to stand alone and speak truth when some are hard of hearing. But if you've been waiting to hear a voice that opens the gates of freedom and breaks the shackles of confusion to allow you to step forward into the dawning of a new and exciting future, then it's time to bridge the gap with Dr. G. Alfred Palmer. He is a dynamic speaker, thought leader, and entrepreneur, equipped to elevate, expand, and extend the development, empowerment, and leadership of his audiences. He stands ready to speak at your next event. His delivery is guaranteed to refresh, entertain, and transform. G. Alfred Palmer bridges the gap from uncertainty to the purpose, to passion, and leadership. Book him today for your next event, and you won't be disappointed.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Red Hot Mic. I am your host, Dr. G. Alfred Palmer. Come on in this house. Say good evening to my co-host, Headley Lamar, who always holds my hat as I get ready to come on. He makes sure that I have my hat, and I do tonight. So I am excited about tonight. You're going to be as well, I hope. But let's start the way you know how we start, with music. So let's do it like this. Come on. Yeah. Like this. Yeah. Come on. Like this. Come on. Nice and mellow. Let's slow it up. Yeah. It's like that. Slow it up. It's the middle of the week. We want to just slow it up. Take our time a little bit. It's all good. Come on. Yeah, come on. Let's take our time. Take our time and do it right. Come on. Come on. That's what I'm talking about. It's the Red Hot Mic. And I am your host, Dr. G. Alfred Palmer, welcoming you to come on in this house. Come on in this house. And here's to you. And all that you are, and all that you will be, and all that you will ever imagine to be. Far beyond. Cheers. Yeah. Yeah. It's time for us. Yeah. Come on. Let's pick it up. Come on in here. Come on in here. Yeah. Come on in here. It's the Red Hot Mic. And I am your host, G. Alfred Palmer. Get in here, boy. Come on, girl. Come on. It's that time. It's around the 9 o'clock hour. Here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And we're doing it like this. We're doing it like this. Like this. Like this. Come on. Come on. Come on. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming into the Red Hot Mic. I appreciate you coming in. It's time for us to get busy. It's time for us to ruminate, elevate, and to activate. Come on. Come on. Listen up. Listen up. Come on. Listen up. Listen up. Woo! Come on in this house. Do me a favor. Hit that like, hit that share, and hit that notification. Come on. Let somebody else come on in this house. I appreciate you liking it, sharing it, and hitting the notification. That's right. Yeah. Thank you once again. Once again. Come on. Come on. That 808. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. This is how we do. It's the Red Hot Mic. Coming straight to you. Come on. Woo! Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. That's all right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Woo! Uh-huh. Come on. Come on. Oh. Feel that bass. Feel that bass. All up in your face. Come on. Come on. Yeah, this is how we do. This is how we do. Woo! This is how we do. yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming into the Red Hot Mic once again. And I am your host, Dr. G. Alpha Palmer, and I appreciate you coming once again. You know, it's great to have you because you could be doing something else. You could be doing something else rather than being here with me. And I'm appreciative to you for that reason. Tonight, we are going to be coming to you on 3 platforms. We're coming on Facebook, we're coming on YouTube, and on Twitter tonight. So we're on 4 different platforms if you count StreamYard. I am really excited about tonight's broadcast because tonight's broadcast is going to deal with some things that I think that really, really needs to be dealt with. And it's not because I get accused of not liking women. I get accused of women bashing. I get accused of a lot of different things, which is all untrue. I don't have anything against women. The idea that some people have that I do is basically by people who don't even know me. They don't even know me. And because they don't know me, with the things that they say, really, really, their opinion of me, and I mean, everybody has opinions. So with those opinions, I mean, that some are right, some are wrong. But anyway, we're going to keep moving on. Let me do something real quick. I need to be right back. Sorry about that. But I have a light that comes and it pretty much gets right in my eye. And so I wanted to turn it off so it doesn't. I like it for the music part, but I mean, it's just me. So if I had someone else here to help me out, it would be different. But it's just me, so I have to do what I have to do. I'm really excited about this particular broadcast because, like I said, it's a broadcast that's addressing something that I think needs to be addressed, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it all because of the length of it, but it is important. And again, I've been accused of not liking women, but this is something that I think is important to help our women. I am not hating on women. I love women to the point that I'm willing to tell them the truth. I'm not going to lie. See, some people will say anything to get what they want. I have nothing. I have no cut card. I have no ulterior motive. Nothing. I want to tell you the truth so that you can be the best that you can be. Not just the women, but the men as well. I don't have any cut card. This is what I'm being created to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. I am not doing this for notoriety. I'm doing this because this is my assignment. This is my assignment. And that this assignment may change, but for right now, this is my assignment. Tonight, my assignment is to address femininity. And tonight I'm going to address what the title says of the broadcast. Her strength has become her weakness. And that's my assignment tonight. It's not that I'm trying to be hateful, spiteful, or to come against women and always putting down women. No, it depends on how you look at this cup. Is it half empty or half full? It's all about your attitude. I don't care how anyone brings anything. It's always about your attitude, how you receive it, how you choose to receive it. Okay, and if you choose to receive it, regardless of the way that they may bring it, you can still choose to receive it a different way. Choice is always up to you. You have freedom of choice, and that freedom of choice is even goes to the fact that however someone said something, it is up to you how you receive it. I've been accused of being disrespectful and mean and all these other things by words that I print or write or post when some folks have never even heard the sound of my voice. How do you distinguish that those are harsh words when you've never heard my bass tenor treble of my voice? You never heard my attitude or anything else about my personality. All it is some words on paper that you have interpreted in your own paradigm about me, about yourself. It can't be about me because you don't know me, nor even heard my voice. So it's all about you. So I want to talk about uh, the, this. Her strength has become her weakness. Why? Because it's important that we understand the importance of femininity. Gentlemen, it's important that you understand it's critical that you understand the importance of femininity and not take advantage, but understand that we need her to survive. We need her equally as she needs us. I said it before, I'll say it again. We are equal, but not the same. We are equal, but not the same. But how does that happen? Well, 6 plus 4 equals 10, but so does 5 plus 5 equal 10. But they're different, but they're equal. They're equal, but they are different. But they add up to the same. We need her. She needs us. We two become one. You need that in order for us to be able to sustain our species and for us to remain dominant in this realm. So it's important that we address both masculine and feminine. But I would dare say this. I would dare say this. For what I'm going to be talking about tonight, she's the most important. She is the most important because it's what we're talking about tonight. So in that regard, we want to talk about uh, how we were once close together and how we've diverged into separate directions as masculine and feminine, and how we can come back together. Because when we talk about the the feminine nature, we're talking about something that's what I would dare say is the most powerful formation on the planet. There's nothing that has been formed that is more important, more wonderfully made than the feminine nature. Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing. And see, notice what I said, the feminine nature. Feminine nature is different than feminism. Feminists has a different idea what femininity looks like. But what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the femininity that you were created to have and why it's important that you have that type as opposed to what's being promulgated in our culture today. Now, believe me, I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I know some of you are not going to receive what I'm going to say, but that's fine because it's not meant for you anyway. I'm only sent to those that would have an ear to hear. If you won't hear me, that's fine. And if you don't hear me, there's no reason for me to address your questions because it's really not going to bring about any kind of fruitfulness. Those that have an ear to hear, and there's no reason to ask questions. There isn't. The ones that don't hear and need clarity because you're not hearing right. You're not hearing right. But I understand what you need to do is continually to hear. But you're not going to hear it this time. You need to catch it the next time or the next time or the next time because familiarity or faith comes by continually hearing something. you begin to become more acquainted with it. It's just like you having a significant other. If you have been around that person time and time again, over and over again, you begin to know what their voice sounds like. You know what their mentality is like, right? And so if someone to come along and get on the phone and say that they're that person, you would know in an instant, whether that's that person or not, because you've been around them so much and so long, you know the sound of their voice. You become acquainted intimately with the sound of their voice because you hear them. Hearing is more intimate than listening. Listening is more of a physiological operation. Hearing goes into all three realms: spirit, soul, body, and it causes us to, in totality, to hear. And that's why we're able to receive when we hear as opposed to when we listen. And when we listen, we don't hear things and we don't get it right because we're not listening, or we're not hearing with our whole being. Many times people will listen to wait to you to wait for you to be quiet so that they can refute what you said. They don't want to hear. So it doesn't behoove me to continue to go about trying to convince someone of something that you're never going to convince them of. And it's okay not to convince them of it because it's not their time. And hopefully, eventually, the universe will grant them the opportunity to hear as opposed to listen. And so tonight, this session, this broadcast, I'm hoping that you will hear me. And those that would hear me, this is for you. And those that wouldn't or won't, this isn't. Okay? I want to first start out by wanting you to understand this. I have a book that's called The Stages of Development. And the book is designed to help us improve relationship. Because what we're seeing now on our social media platforms and around the world is we're seeing a failure to communicate. With relationships are at an all-time low. There are these arguments in what we call gender war because of a lack of understanding of how we got here and what we're here to do. So it's important for us to gain a better understanding of what we're here for, what we're here to do. Okay, and so it's important that tonight on this broadcast that I speak to some things that are relative to the feminine nature. And it's because she is so very important. She is very, very important. And I don't want to hurt, I want to help. I don't want to hinder, I want to heal. And so in order to do that, you have to hear me. Hear my heart and not my, when I was in the church, we used to always say, charge it to my head and not to my heart. If I say anything that would be untoward or that would offend you, because that is not my intention. But I'm fallible. I make mistakes. I will say things that may not be articulated right, enunciated right, or even intimated right. But I would say this, that I know that I'm not doing this to hurt, to harm anyone, because there's nothing in that. There's nothing to that. So let's start here. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is in the book Stages of Development that I've published. It's on my website. The description will be in the description below what the website is. But I want to talk about before I have to bring you into the position of where we're going to be. First of all, we've got to understand that there are periods of human development. There are periods of human development. The first one is where masculinity and femininity in the cosmos reside. And in the cosmos, what happens is masculinity and femininity needed to come into this sphere. Now, in order for it to lawfully, because everything in the universe is done lawfully, legally, and rightly. And it cannot be done in a wrong fashion or illegally, because it would void all creation, and all creation would implode and explode because and be done away with because of one idea of illegality. That's the word I'm looking for. Illegality. And if that's the case, what would happen is it would void the whole creation and cause it to become void. So everything is done decently and in an orderly fashion. And once it's done in an orderly fashion, it has to obey the law. Okay? Now, when we talk about masculinity and femininity coming into this sphere, we have to understand that masculinity pierces, it injects, it penetrates, and it inserts. It is not gender. That is the action, the characteristic of masculinity. Hear me. That is not men. That is not man in the cosmos. Those are the conditions, the characteristics of masculinity. Masculinity comes to penetrate. It comes to insert. It comes to pierce and to inject. Now, femininity, on the other side of the same coin, comes to receive, to incubate, to nurture, okay, and to hold. Those are qualities that, if you look at everything in this realm, it either holds to those two entities, masculinity or femininity. Now, when those two energies came into this sphere, because femininity was not designed to penetrate, to insert, to inject, or to pierce, it could not enter into this sphere because that's what it requires. It requires masculinity. So what happened is masculinity hid femininity inside of itself in order for it to continue to be lawful to enter into this sphere. That's good stuff. I don't care what you say. And so when femininity entered inside of masculinity, there came a period where masculinity, which took on certain characteristics physically, mentally, in every area, cognitively, mentally, physiologically, emotionally, in a nutshell, DMA, in their DNA and their DMA, design, mission, and assignment. So when that happened, that energy that comes here still has to insert, it has to penetrate, it has to inject, all right, or insert, penetrate, pierce. Okay, so it has to continue to do that. So when it came into this sphere, it had to have the design to be able to do that. Your physical design is indicative of the masculine or feminine that you had or have been given and have been assigned to bring to this realm. You're not an accident. You're an intentional thought. You're an intentional thought. So when the femininity came inside of the masculinity, it doesn't say that because now before she was formed, because there's a difference. She was formed, man was created. So when she came, she had to be formed. That which is formed comes from that which already is. Creation comes from something that was made out of nothing. That is not a put down. That is a lawful, legal, and rightful way that the universe has decided how things are to be done. It doesn't make anyone less or anyone more. It is just how the universe has dictated how things are supposed to be. So once the the feminine was identified and needed to be extracted, it was eventually extracted from the masculine, and woman was formed. But it's important to understand that woman came from man. Woman came from man. She is a part. So it's important for you to understand that you are a part of him. That's why a man has the right, the legal right, and it is legal, not only legally right, but lawful that he speak into you, ladies. But in this day and time, men can't tell these females anything. Women understand that, but females don't. They have issues with hearing because they don't hear. And the reason is because of what we're going to talk about as we go on. And now it's important to understand that when you came into this sphere and you put on this body, there's certain thing that came with you. There's first thing that came with you is your purpose. The second thing is your masculine or feminine designation. And that is indicative of your design, what you look like, what the equipment you came with. The equipment you came with is directly connected with how you're to be most effective in this sphere. That's important for us to understand. It's important for us to understand. Now, let's talk about development. We'll talk about once you come here in this realm, we have a CPU, and that CPU has in it uploaded masculine or feminine, depending on what our design is. It's in the CPU, and that CPU always is there in the background working. But when we come born into this sphere, we have a clean slate, and we are in need of software to be uploaded into us, and that happens through our parents. It happens through our community, culture, and clan, but initially, the first learners, the first educators are the parents. Some would say it's the mother. It's not only the mother, but it is also the father. And if it was just the mother, we wouldn't see the situations that we see in our community, culture, and clan, especially where fathers are absent. We're seeing mothers that are present, but fathers are absent because they are missing some of the teaching necessary for their development from the parent that's different from their gender or the same of their gender, depending on what's necessary at that particular moment. So when we are born, we have that slate clean, and it's our first learners who are our parents. Now, our parents are supposed to indoctrinate us, to teach us, to discipline us in how we are to function in this realm. Now, in functioning in this realm, how we're to do that is we begin to imitate that one parent that looks most like us, that has the same design as us. And so we begin to emulate that person, and we watch that person. That's what children do. Children learn, and they are uploaded in things. You see, it's not what you say, it's what you do, and that's what gets uploaded. It's what you say too, but even more so what you do. They watch, and you wonder how they learned that. They learned it because they saw it. They saw it. And so it becomes important that we be careful what we do and say around our children. Now, when we start talking about developmental stages, there's some developmental stages that we all go through. Now, these developmental stages are a part of both masculine and feminine. And in my book, I go in depth into these, and I'm just going to hit on the most critical part about why I'm here tonight and the assignment that I'm here for tonight. Now, when we talk about the stages of development, the first thing is a prenatal developmental stage. After the prenatal, and that's where the prenatal is where we get our gender assignment. That's where you get your design. The next one is our infancy. See, because prenatal is actually where we're developed, and we're in the womb and things of that nature. Now, once we've passed the prenatal developmental phase, we enter into what we call the infancy. We get birthed, which is, we know that we get birthed, and then the next is we go into infancy and toddler. Now, in infancy, birth, infancy, and toddler, we are not males and females. We are boys and girls. And I've said this before. What dictates, when we have gender parties, we have the blue that represents boys and the pink represent girls. I did that intentionally because we're talking about girls tonight. And even more so our children are placed into the nursery, into their crib or their cradle. What's placed above their cradle is, in the nursery, is not male or female. It says boy or girl and the last name. Okay, so it's important that we understand we come here as babies, and those we come in as boys or girls. Next is childhood. Now, there's 3 phases to childhood. There's early childhood, middle childhood, and then there's puberty or adolescence. It's important. That's important because one of the things that we've got to remember is that girls matriculate from girlhood, because this is what we're talking about, boys, girls. She matriculates from girlhood to femalehood earlier than boys matriculate from boyhood to malehood. And it's important to understand that distance, that difference is maintained throughout life. She will always develop quicker than you. She will always mature ahead of you, which also means she will age before you. She will get older before you. She will not be able to have children as long as you. All of those things come into play. It continues throughout life. Now, after childhood comes youth. And under youth, again, we have early malehood, early femalehood, middle femalehood, middle malehood, and then late malehood, late femalehood. See, this is under youth. Okay? And here's the problem. So often we think that the person that we are in relationship with, we take for granted that because of their physiological build, it's got big muscles, she's got lips, tips, and fingertips. She's got lips, hips, and fingertips. So she's got all the qualities, breasts, and everything. So she has that physical build, that Coke bottle shape. So we think that she is totally all that, and that she's a woman. Well, she may or she may not, because what we've got to understand is that that childhood and their youth, and all depends on the whole idea of development, human development. We stem and we think and we gauge maturity based on physiological or chronological development. If you're a certain age, 18 or above, you are an adult, or you have physical attributes that show that you are an adult. When in all actuality, they may be underdeveloped or not developed at all, cognitively, emotionally, right, psychologically. And it's because of those things we find ourselves in relationships with people that we think that are adults, and they're not. We think that they're adults, and they're not. Now, after we talk about them being in their malehood or femalehood, the next thing is adulthood. And going in adulthood, there is an early, middle, and late stages. And it's important to understand what happens in the areas of cognitive, physical development, emotional development, physiological development, philosophical development. There's so many things that go into play that distinguishes whether a person is an adult or not. And what we have done is we have taken, and that's why we are in relationships without really knowing the person that we are with until it's too late. Until it's too late. Now, once a person gets into adulthood, again, early, middle, and late stage, womanhood, manhood. Early, middle, womanhood, middle, manhood. Late womanhood, late manhood. There's certain aspects, we're not going to get it here, but we're going to talk about it on our other station and in the book that's going to come through our other station. So that's important that we understand, because there's some critical things that go on in each stage. There's some critical things that go on. Now, for some of us, it's too late. We're not going to be able to change because we've gone past some of the youth. We've gone past adult, and we have gone into what I call the last phase or stage, and that is elderhood, and where there's early elderhood, middle elderhood, and late elderhood. Okay, and then there's aspects of that are indicators that show where we are, and it shows how we should operate relationally in these areas as well. Now, I want to talk about some real briefly some areas of human development markers. There are some markers, and these markers are in all of us. We go through all of these markers through life, hopefully, and we mature to get to the place where we are wholly adults. Okay, now, and I've basically mentioned them already. And these particular markers are physiological, psychological, philosophical, cognitive, mental, and emotional. Now, I put emotional last because that's what I want to talk about in regards to the whole idea her strength has become her weakness. Now, when we talk about emotional developmental markers, the first thing we've got to understand is that the experiences of females emotionally enable them to move from relationship to relationship relatively easily compared to men. Now watch this. When you look at women throughout history, there are certain things that have occurred. There are certain aspects, and we're going to talk a little bit about them further down. I probably should have waited to put this a little bit further. But the bottom line is, there are certain aspects in historical markers that have taken place. There's social development. There's social development, and we've gone through tribal development where tribes would war, and women were the prize. They were the spoil. And these women could have been wives, daughters, lost their parents, where these tribal wars would eventually kill the men and the boys, but take the girls and the females. And they would become a part of the conquering tribe. And think about that. They had the women had to learn how to adapt emotionally quickly, to grieve and get over the loss, and to become assimilated into the new tribe and to become a part of them. And so that called for a transition in their emotional status, and also in the other areas of their physiological, not so much physiological, but the psychological, philosophical, cognitive, and mental aspects of who they are. And so this agency, this ability for them to change continues. For instance, a woman could lose her husband and quickly get over losing her husband in comparison to a man who would lose his wife getting over her. And it's because of the way women are built. It's not right or wrong. It just is. And the reason that it is for survival. It's for survival. They did not have the muscularity, so it became important for them to have their wits about them, their emotional wits about them, their cognitive and mental wits about them, and they used them to their advantage to survive. To survive. Because in tribal instances, they were not strong enough to defeat the conquering tribe. And that same type of mentality goes from every sociological development change that we've experienced throughout time. Even from tribal to hunter-gatherers, to the industrial stage, to the post-industrial. And what that same mentality of survival has always been with women. Always. And it's also, what also has been with them is the emotional piece. Emotion, they are very emotional. Why? Because it's important to the survival of our species that emotions play a part. But understand and remember, she was separated. And part of that was separated was the emotional piece, the feminine piece. The feminine piece houses the emotional piece. It is not less than, it is equal in importance, but just different. Just like the man is more logical, but yet holds emotional aspects of his personality. So does a woman, even though she has leanings toward emotions, she still is logical. But from her innate design, she is to be more emotional, as the man is to be more logical. Now, that's not a bad thing. So it's important for us to understand that hypergamy, or hypergamy, or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, hypergamy is natural. It's not a bad thing. Women are going to look for someone that's going to enable them to present the best chances of survival. That's not a put down, ladies. That is a skill. That is the developmental skill trait that you have. And it's not a bad thing. Not in and of itself. But what we've done is anything that we don't use the way that it's intended, we misuse it. And if we continue, we will abuse it. And that means to abnormally use it. So what I'm saying is that her strength in this instance is her emotional development. It's her strength. She is to be emotional. Her emotional development helps to sustain our species. The way she was built, emotionally, and in today's standards, we hear so often that women are not going to put up with being mistreated. Well, your grandmother was mistreated, but she was emotionally strong. Why? Because she had a commitment to duty and to family. She had a commitment to her marriage. Okay? And what you've got to understand is masculinity operates differently than femininity. And what we are experiencing now is we're experiencing toxic femininity that has traits of masculinity in it. And as a result, many of our females they act masculine. They act masculine. Here's where they have not developed or are undeveloped emotionally. Okay? Whereas our grandmothers were emotionally developed because they understood the commitment to family. They understood the commitment to duty. Regardless of what was going on in the community, culture, or clan, no matter what he was doing how misogynistic or undeveloped he was or underdeveloped he was, a woman understands her duty to family. And I need to say this, a family is not a family that doesn't have a man. A family is not a family that does not have a man. There needs to be a husband. There needs to be a father involved in that family for it to be a family. If a man's not there, it's not a family, it's a clan. It's a clan. It's not a family. And so when a husband dies, a woman should find a husband. She should remarry. She should. It's right for her to remarry. But today's standards say no. I want to be alone. I want to be able to do my thing. Well, what you've got to understand is you are going to get older quicker, and you're going to get to a place where you're going to lose selection value. You're going to lose it eventually. You're going to lose it. So, but that's not what I want to focus in on. What I want to focus in on is this. Her strength. Her strength is her ability to emotionally cope with tragedy, betrayal, death. And it was seen as her strength because it is her strength. It is her strength because understand this. Understand this. I want to share this with you real quick. It's out of order, but I'm going to share it with you anyway because I'm here now. One of the things that you've got to understand is that females emotionally, their emotional ability is to adapt. That's their emotional strength, to adapt. And so what grandma was able to do was to adapt. What modern females are not willing or able to do is to adapt. And so as a result of that, what happened as a result of her inability to control her emotions, and what happened as a result of that is that she has begun to deal and to suffer in the area where she was most strongest and what she brought to the table to our relationship that is no longer an asset but has now become a liability. And that's her emotional development. Because that is her dominant developmental characteristic. Her ability to her emotion is critically important and separates her from us. It's critically important. So human development research that women are logical and rational, but that they tend to be more emotional, leaning and being led by their emotions. And it's in their emotional realm that they suffer the most. Why? It's because they are in their feelings a lot. They feel, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. What we've got to learn how to do is to exchange logic, and she's got to learn how to be more logic. We've got to learn how to feel, and basically put ourselves in the other person's shoes to better understand. It's better to first to understand than to be understood. Okay. So her dominant and so she's going to suffer emotionally. She suffers emotionally. Tragedy. She goes through tragedy, losing children, losing relationship, losing, and those losses affect her emotionally. And as a result of those emotions, being affected, certain things take place. And one of the things that take place is that she begins to suffer emotionally. Now, there are more than 200 classifications of diagnosed mental illness. Okay? And when she begins to suffer, and she begins to experience emotional disorders. Okay? Now, some of the most common emotional disorders that are out there are anxiety disorder, bipolar, eating disorder, personality disorder, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, psychotic disorder, including schizophrenia, and depression. Now, depression is one of the most readily experienced diagnosable disorders, emotional disorders that women suffer. It is the most suffered by women. Why? Why is that so? Well, let's look at it. Let's look at depression. Depression is a mental health disorder characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activity, causing significant impairment in daily life. Possible causes include a combination of biological, psychological, and social sources of stress, distress. Increasingly, research suggests these factors may cause change in brain function, including altered activities of certain neural circuits in the brain. So, what am I saying? It's important for us to understand that depression affects her total being, the totality of her. So depression is the thing that we want to talk about. And why is depression? Why is it so important? Because there's a lot of women suffering from it. And because they're suffering from it, it affects relationship. It affects relationship. It affects her, as it says here. It affects and impairs her daily life. And it's caused by a combination of biological, psychological, social factors. Remember what I said? Is these factors that we're talking about come from a physiological, psychological, philosophical, cognitive, mental, and emotional developmental markers. It's important to understand this. It's important to understand it so men, we can locate our women. To locate our women. It's important that we be able to better understand why they function the way they do. And how we can navigate that to be able to bring about a more peaceful existence. Now, again, her strength, which was her emotional state, her ability, grandma's ability to sustain and go through not having food, not having electricity, man left her, all these other she had the emotional intestinal fortitude to endure and continue to move on. Now, as a result of emotional strength, some of the things that we need to identify. In 2016, over 16.2 million Americans suffer from depression. However, females are more readily to be diagnosed of major depression. Okay? In society, in the United States, when we look at from a percentage, 4.8, around 5% males suffer from depression. Closer to 10%, 8.5, closer to 9% are female. Almost double suffer from depression. Women are almost twice as much suffer from depression. Now, here's an interesting thing, though. Even though women almost twice as suffer from depression, men commit suicide at a higher rate than women do from depression. Men commit suicide at 7% rate, and women just 1%. Why? Females are built to sustain emotional trauma. Now, that's not saying that she should. I'm saying that she is built to. That's why she's not going to commit suicide. She's not going to commit suicide because of her sense of duty. Her sense of duty to her family or to her clan, and depending on her situation. She's not going to commit, but men will commit suicide at a higher rate than females will. That says a lot. That says a lot about our women. So women suffer more from depression, but men are more likely to commit suicide as a result of suffering from depression. Interesting. Now, when we talk about depression and we talk about the criteria to determine what depression, when you are depressed, and I would say this to you, we all suffer from depression soon. It's a part of it. Life. It's a human condition. It's a human condition. But there's some things that need to take place because women suffer from it more, and not only more, but they endure it for longer periods of time. Now, in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5, DSM-5, depression, the diagnostic criteria for depression is as follows. It says the DSM-5 outlines the following criterion to make the diagnosis of depression. The individual must be experiencing 5 or more symptoms during the same 2-week period, and at least one of the symptoms should be either 1, a depressed mood, or 2, a loss of interest or pleasure. Okay? Now, granted, beloved, every one of us are going to experience this. Every one of us. See, the thing about depression is it's a part of life. What we've got to learn how to do is we've got to learn how to deal with it. We've got to understand what it looks like. What are some of the indicators of it? So let's talk about that. Because what this says here, it says here that the individual must experience 5 or more of these symptoms. Now there are 8 of them. There's 8. Okay? I talked about narcissistic personality disorder in our last broadcast, and there were 9 criteria there that said that you have to experience 5 of them. Now here it says there's only 8, and you got to experience 5 of them. Now, the narcissistic personality disorder said that you experience 5 of those within a certain amount of time. I believe it was a year. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look. But here it says that you got to experience 5 or more in a 2-week period. That's ridiculous. But anyway, everybody gets depressed. It's a part of the human condition. Doesn't make you ill, doesn't make you sick, doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It makes you human. But we have to deal with the depression so we can, because we need her to be emotionally strong and vibrant, because we need her. Gentlemen, you need her. Okay? So we're going to talk about these indicators, and we're going to talk about how we can do some other things. Okay, so let's look at the 8 criteria. Number 1, depressed mood. Most of the day, nearly every day. Depressed mood. I researched this when I was in seminary. And one of the things I found out about depressed mood I found the definition in the Psalms, in the biblical narrative, the best definition that I've ever seen. And it basically talks about sitting down beside the rivers of Jordan, and there we ponder. In other words, you depressed mood means that you get to a place where you push down and you sit there. And you sit there and you just ponder about something that could be changed, but you're in a place where you're not able to change right now because of your mood. But it says here that it's depressed every day or nearly every day or most of the day. Number 2, markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. So a person that's experiencing depression is a person that loses interests. That's why when we start talking about how we have to, so we're going to talk about it. There's importance to getting up from that. That's one of the things that we have to learn about depression. You've got to get up. Number 3, significant weight loss when not dieting, or weight gain, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. In other words, you're either losing weight, gaining weight, eating too much, or not eating enough. Okay? That's what depression will do. Okay? Weight gain, weight loss. Overeating, not eating enough. Okay? Number 4, a slowing down of thought and a reduction of physical movement, observable by others, not merely subjective feelings of restlessness or being slowed down. In other words, it means that there becomes less cognitive movement. Less cognitive movement. And because of that, they get stuck, because they're stuck at a certain place about it, thinking about a certain thing. And because they think about that certain thing, they stop movement. And that movement is observed. Everybody can tell you're not moving. You're missing in action. You're not going out. You're not doing this. Oh, I just don't feel like it. Oh, I just, I'm just tired. Yeah. That's what depression will do. Make you feel tired. Number 5, fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. And it's important that we understand that the fatigue must be remedied. You've got to fight it. We're going to talk about it. Number 6, feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. Nearly every day. Feeling guilty about something. The relationship didn't go right. I didn't do this right. I didn't do that right. Me. And most of the time, it's not you. It's not you. It isn't. There are always other contributing factors. You may have contributed to it, but you may have not. But it's no sense of dwelling over something. A lot of times, when we're dwelling over some things, especially concerning people, they're not dwelling on you. You need to get up and move. Okay? All right. So that worthlessness and guilt needs to be dealt with. Okay. Number 7, diminishing ability to think or concentrate, or indecisiveness nearly every day. Can't make a decision. Listen, make a decision, right or wrong, good or bad. At least you make a decision. You can always correct it, but at least make one and commit to that decision. And if you have to change midstream or afterwards because it doesn't fail, what's wrong with that? Everyone has to change sooner or later. Something didn't work, so you have to try something else. That happens to all of us, right? So it's important to make decisions. Good, bad, right or wrong, make a decision. Ma'am, make a decision. Number 8, reoccurring thoughts of death. Reoccurring suicidal ideations without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. Now, this is when when depression gets to its worst. This is when suicide gets to its worst. This is when there needs to be an intervention. There needs to be some type of commitment to some type of program, whether residential, but that's what we're getting ready to talk about. Some of the answers. Some answers that we need to have. First of all, we've got to have some honesty. This is the first thing that you got to have if you're going to address and answer these things relative to depression. You've got to be willing. You got to first be honest about where you are. Got to be honest. Everyone gets depressed. There's nothing wrong with saying that I'm depressed. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of awareness. You're aware of where you are. You're in touch with where you are and who you are. That is a good thing, not a bad thing. The next thing is a willingness. You got to be willing to do something about it. You got to be willing to address the suicidal thoughts. You got to be willing to address the ideations, the feelings of worthlessness and guilt. You got to be willing to address the fatigue, the loss of energy. You got to be willing to address the ill thoughts and the lack of movement. You got to be willing to address the weight loss or the weight gain. You got to be willing to address the diminished interest of doing things, and you got to address the depressed mood. You got to be willing to do this. You got to be open. The next one. You got to be. It's how. It's an acrostic how. HOW. Honesty, openness, and willingness. It's very popular in the 12-step model of addiction or recovery, I should say. AA and such. How? These are very important characteristics in order for you to get your strength back. The next thing is counseling or therapy. I ask this a lot of women, especially that have had weight loss, weight gain, especially women who have gained a lot of or have had on a lot of weight and they lost the weight, whether it's by exercise. I've known women who got the gastric bypass and all those kinds of things. And as a result of those things, they lose weight and they get surgery. It's very traumatic. It's very traumatic. Counseling is needed. Therapy is needed. Not only for that, but the mentality it takes to change from someone who was not very sought after to now maybe being sought after. Do you have the resentments? Anger. Which is why you take it out on some other. And so it's important that you go into therapy and deal with what that transformation has brought about in your attitude. Right? So it becomes important to go into counseling. I ask this all the time of women, especially when there were extreme changes in their physical appearance. Because there needs to be a change physically, cognitively, emotionally, right? And that's what counseling and therapy will do, help you to begin to become aware and to make some changes cognitively, behaviorally, right? Okay? So the next thing is vigorous physical activity. Remember what we talked about. We talked about some of the lack of movement. Okay? We talked about the lack of energy, the fatigue. It's not just moving. It needs to be vigorously moving. Running. Movement that is exaggerated. Why? Because it stimulates the endorphins. It gets your body moving. It gets your body losing natural weight and starting to energize hormones and things that need to be started moving about and chemical changes that are necessary. So it's not just walking. You need to vigorously make yourself. I mean, when you're overweight and walking is fine, but you need to get to a place to where you cause your body to vibrate. Because in vibrating, it shakes loose fat. It shakes loose. It causes the tissue to move about so that you can urinate, you can do whatever it needs to excrete those particular things. And so it becomes very, very important that you have vigorous physical activity, not just I'm going to walk. I'm going to swim slowly. No, you need to be vigorous. You need to increase that heart rate. You need to increase that heart rate and maintain that heart rate up being elevated for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Longer as you continue to get in shape. Because the more you're able to do that, the more that you'll be able to lose weight without more invasive measures. Okay. The next things, these are commonsensical things, but it's things that we need to do. Balanced diet. We need to learn to eat better, right? We need to learn. We all know this. The next thing is to conduct daily emotional inventories. I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence in an upcoming video, and I think that's an important area to address. And from a masculine and feminine perspective, um, we're going to deal with that as well. But we need to be able to take a daily inventory of our and for some of us, it's going to be a moment to moment emotional inventory to better control and identify and become aware of our emotions and how we need or should or can look at alternative ways of dealing with them. And lastly, here is we want to deal and improve in our effective communication, minimizing the emotional piece. Okay? Excuse me, it's important. The importance the importance of feminine energy cannot be overstated. It cannot. And one of the problems that you see is the emotional destabilization of women is increasing. And it's not even women, it's females. Women are emotionally stable. There's a difference because women are developed mentally, cognitively, emotionally, psychologically, and philosophically. They are developed. They don't need developing, but females do. Females do. And you can tell the difference between a woman and a female by just letting them talk. By letting them talk. And you'll experience exactly where they are. Exactly where they are. And so it's important that these things take place. And we go into counseling and deal with the hurts, deal with the past, deal with the very thing that the area where you're stuck. And most sticking points, in my experience with working with people, happen in your childhood. Most sticking points have something to do with your childhood. So we need to go back into your childhood and ascertain and find out what it was. And we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it. So, anyway, I'm hoping that this is something that you see as being important, that we can return her back to her strength. We need you, ladies, to be at your emotional best. As a team, whoever you're in a relationship with, can say that she is someone that's bringing emotional stability to the table. You want to know what you're supposed to bring to the table? One thing is emotional stability, right? Emotional stability. And so I hope you got something out of this. I know I did. I'm so glad when I fulfill my assignments. And so, well, I enjoyed being with you. And I hope that you've enjoyed this time together. So until the next time we come together, this is Dr. G. Alpha Palmer. And peace.